Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Present podcast. My name is Daniel Mulligan, and here I'm joined live by Pujix from Toronto, Canada. Hey there, my man. How's it going?
It's going excellent, man. I have to tell you, I'm actually recording this from in the middle of the jungle. So I hope nothing goes wrong.
Middle of a jungle? What jungle, by the way? In Toronto or like
it's just outside of Toronto. It's somewhere around Oshawa.
Interesting. And may I ask you, what the heck are you doing in a jungle?
Well, just going for some photos and come back soon into this civility.
All right. So it's an excursion just for the photos.
Yeah, just,
Nothing naughty, I hope. Nothing naughty, I hope.
I hope not.
Fantastic. Very well. And guess what, guys? We have a new guest on board for the first time. His name is Deep Prasad, and he's now here to tell us all about himself. So, Deep, my man, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Daniel.
It's wonderful to have you, Deep. So right now, go ahead and tell us more about yourself, your background, and tell our listeners about yourself a little bit more.
Sure. So I'm a Canadian tech entrepreneur. I work with both quantum computers and classical supercomputers. What we're trying to do is essentially provide major speedups to engineering simulations, because engineering simulations take anywhere from 6 hours to 6 weeks to do. And what we want to do is provide speedups of 100x or more. And what we've done is we've been working with large companies in various aerospace and consumer product industries. And it mostly relies on machine learning and quantum computing for the most part, as well as advanced numerical methods.
Listen, I think right now I'm feeling a little bit threatened by, I think, your IQ here, man. What the heck is all I can't. So right now, how old are you, Deep?
I'm 23.
Amazing. All of this at 23. Just incredible. So tell me right now, Deep, are you currently actually selling your basically ideas, products, and patents, or currently you're in the research phase?
No, we're selling. We are, I can't say too much, but we're partnered with a couple of big guys, and we're pretty close to having our first sort of like live, pilot that will be being developed at one of these companies.
Wow. And first of all, Deep, how did you get started with all this? Like, what happened that you suddenly got into this huge startup in this industry? First, like, what happened?
Well, I've been doing entrepreneurship for a very long time. My first startup was when I was 17, and since then, I've just been trying and failing. I was also doing my undergrad in engineering at the same time, so it was very hard to get things off the ground. But as soon as school ended, I started a full-time job for about 4 days, left, and then went to do the whole entrepreneurship thing full-time. That was about a year ago. I got funded by Bloomberg and some other venture firms.
My goodness.
Yeah, I've just been rolling since then.
Pujix told me earlier that we are talking to Deep Prasad, who is this cool entrepreneur. I would have said, oh my goodness, better prepare my lawyer here. It's unbelievable, man. I had no idea that Deep is so cool. So, of course, this topic is not about entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs and all that stuff. But what I want to know right now from you, basically, is if you were to describe very briefly your experience as an entrepreneur and what you think makes an entrepreneur successful. Again, that's not our topic right now, but very briefly, because you right now are a young, basically, entrepreneur, and you have had, multiple startups, a lot of great fundings. What do you think are the most important elements of success as an entrepreneur?
Sure, I think that's a great question, and it can end up being the billion-dollar question, right? So, what makes one thing that comes with just being really good in entrepreneurship, or what the thing that will help you succeed the most is resiliency. I don't know, trusting your inner voice, having like a really good vision that doesn't just self-serve. It's more like service to others. If you can find a mission that depends on that, you're good.
Amazing, truly amazing. And I'm so happy to have another entrepreneur on basically show here. Obviously, today's topic isn't so much about entrepreneurship. Of course, at some point, we'll have Deep back here to discuss startups at some point. You can later, of course, we'll arrange it with the producer. Pujix. But for now, we will just stick with the main thing. And of course, we're happy to have you. And for today, actually, our topic is rather scientific, if not woohoo. And guess what are we going to talk about today? That's right. UFOs. That's right. And no, we're not talking about you motherfuckers. We're talking about UFOs, the unidentified flying objects. And guess what? Today, that's our topic. So first of all, let me start off with Pujix here. Pujix, before we get into this whole notion of discussing the various aspects of UFOs, I would like to just start off with a basic, simple history of UFOs. And I'd like to actually go ahead and tell us a brief history of the whole UFO thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really, my extent of my knowledge is super limited on this subject, and Deep is gonna fill all the blanks and correct me wherever I'm wrong, because I'm sure I'm gonna be wrong. But the public conversation, at least around UFOs, started sometime, if I'm not mistaken, post World War II.
Absolutely.
And okay, great, I get this right. First one, great. Love it.
That's right. The first one got it right. Let's go. Keep going. Keep scoring out. All right.
So and then there were some sightings of, again, UFOs being unidentified, meaning that, let's say, so Deep, where was this? So was the first sighting in the United States mainland?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, and that's the one around Area 51. Am I correct?
So it was in California. I wouldn't say it was near. I'm not sure whether it was near Area 51, but the first reported official UFO crash was in Roswell, which we can get to after.
That's which we're going to talk about soon.
Of course, we'll talk about Roswell later on. But for now, after that, basically, what else happened?
Yeah. So basically, there was a bunch of phenomena together, but essentially it got to the point that the public became aware to a degree, and it spread through propaganda, through fears of aliens, for example, and other means. So the version that we have today probably is million times refined over time by different people. By the way, we don't have a version. It's just like multiple probably branches of this whole thing, and and yeah. So the start is post World War II. Now the question, it begs the question: why post World War II? What was so special about that? And what are the ramifications of all that, which we're going to talk about with Deep, obviously.
Of course. And I don't know about you guys, but nowadays I think we are not hearing as much about UFOs as probably our parents and grandparents heard about it, in the 20th century. But still, it's happening right now. But I would like to know more about this issue by delving a little deeper and discussing. Earlier you mentioned Roswell, so let me move on here to Deep, and I want to ask you right now, buddy, about the whole Roswell incident. So exactly what was it? What happened, and what basically took place during this incident?
Sure. So, Roswell, as one can imagine, has a sort of big role in ufology or ufology history. The reason why is because there is something grounded in truth about it. The one thing, and that one ground truth, is the fact that on July 8th of 1947, the U.S. military put out a paper saying that they had recovered a crashed flying disc. And
wow.
This is even available on the Wikipedia page. They do not hide this fact. This was the very first thing we heard about the Roswell incident came from the U.S. military themselves, admitting that it happened. Now get this. Yeah, by the end of the day, 12 hours later, they issued a sort of threatening letter to all of the editors that they had been working with to rescind those papers the next day by publishing a new set of papers. So these papers had already been published. They're out there in the public. People are talking about it. But then the very next day, the new newspapers were saying that Roswell had recovered a weather balloon. There was nothing to see here, essentially. They held a press conference shortly after, showing like a crashed weather balloon and with like sticks, and it was ridiculous. It was the most suspicious thing that a government can do. So that
that's right. But what you're saying is, are these things documented, or maybe they're shrouded in mystery and rumors?
What specifically?
Well, in terms of like
Yeah.
seeing and witnessing these flying objects, because let's be honest, earlier you mentioned about how these things were reported, but this happened, remember, in 20th century. So the technology back then was not as advanced as today is. So, I mean, you yourself, do you really believe that such incidents that have been reported throughout history, were they
So
necessarily accurate? Because I myself, I'm a little bit suspicious about the whole notion of UFOs and whether or not they actually really exist.
So I think
I mean,
one thing that I interject before you go ahead is that the Roswell incident was actually a crash. So it's not like you're
that's
looking
right.
at a flying object going across the sky. So it's actually physically there.
So, what exactly was that item? I mean, what exactly was the? It was like just a disc.
That's right. So it was a disc wedged into the ground. It had supposedly, and this is from people who had claimed to be insiders or whatever. You don't have to take it obviously for face value, but yeah, the initial crash though, there was a crash, and people claimed that there were also bodies involved, and there was technologies that recovered that we still to this day have in our possession.
Oh
And
my!
yeah, the thing is, and that's where I can sort of like, I obviously cannot confirm. I'm in no position to, I don't at all, to say that this happened, right? I can't just say, look, this definitely happened. These materials exist. What I can tell you though is my experience with people who are working with materials who come, and those materials come from people who claimed directly came from Roswell. And these materials are very advanced materials. We're talking things that we still can't re-engineer to this day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Good point.
so
Good
and
point.
this is stuff that I was just telling Puya before this. There are certain things that I know that like the average Joe just doesn't, and they will eventually. That doesn't mean that they won't. But just because of my sort of like, I've been proactive. I've also been sort of had the privilege of interacting with a lot of scientists who have directly worked with these materials and some of these recovered crash stuff. So yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Good points. Hands-on experience in this regard. But earlier you mentioned ufology. I had no idea there's a science dedicated to this whole thing. Puya, what do you know about ufology exactly? What is the science?
Well, study of UFOs, right? So I
Yeah,
think
I
So, like,
wouldn't
are
say
you
it's a
saying that there are
science.
scientists who dedicate their entire, academic time to studying UFOs? I mean, do we really have this right now officially, like taught in, let's say,
I
University of Toronto or something?
I think Deep says it doesn't consider it a science, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's totally not a science.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
it
Okay.
is a
It's not an
subject.
official science.
Yeah, no, not yet.
Interesting.
It will be. I
No,
guarantee it in like 5 years or 10 years.
Really?
wow.
So, hold on a second, guys. Our listeners be advised that Deep just mentioned that in 5 to 10 years, you will apply for your PhD in ufology. You better start writing papers, man, right away. Start getting busy, analyzing the
I
samples
would
and
say
whatever.
so.
And let me ask you, Deep, why do you think that's the case? Why do you think ufology becomes, an official field in the future? Like, do you expect some sort of extraterrestrial contact or something?
No, because in my opinion, that's already happened. That's been happening. It's not. That's nothing new to anybody who. I know that nobody needs to believe me, right? Or like I'm just a random person. But that being said, I think what our PhDs and masters will be on is understanding the science behind how these things work, how they fly, how they're able to totally kick our Navy asses. Like
Wow.
we'll go into that requires very, very, very deep technical expertise, and even then, you may not be able to advance your understanding of how these things work. Like progress in this field is very slow. Reverse engineering, how this stuff works, it's very difficult. So a PhD in ufology will be like for the hardcore scientists who are open to just not succeeding their entire PhD.
Wow, incredible. Of course, earlier in one of our previous episodes, we talked about, moving to space and life in other planets. And we discussed there the importance of having Space Force, which is now a new, it's, if you will, in armed forces. And you mentioned earlier that these technologies can kick ass basically all of the Navy stuff that we have right now. It's true, but what if we somehow at some point move to the Space Force? I mean, do you think if we ever move to that level of technology, we can actually be able to discover more about these issues and somehow find more about these UFOs? Or do you think that this is
Yes.
just a matter of randomness? I mean, has there been any, in a recent, let's say in the past few years, anything recorded officially by NASA, by other types of organizations regarding any UFOs? Or this issue still remains mainly in the 20th century?
It's far beyond the 20th century. What we have now is very hard, unequivocal scientific data from sensors that are worth millions of dollars, both old and new sensors. For example, there's a Nimitz incident. This is an incident that happened in 2004. The paper on it was published just under 2 months ago, so it's very recent. It's 270 pages of pure scientific analysis. The data came from these sensors that were provided from the military. The Navy and pilots involved also offer their interviews and collaborations with the scientists who wrote their paper on it throughout the whole time. It took 3 years to write this paper, and 270 papers is monstrous. Nobody writes a paper that big in academia. So, and
never heard 270 pages for a paper, man. That's incredible.
Exactly, right? And if you look at it, and like I met these people in person, right? Some of these scientists are very intelligent. I went down there in part. Like I went to this one place, this private conference for scientists who were being briefed on some of the physics behind these things and the backstory and how certain other aspects of the UFO phenomena by people affiliated with the Pentagon and NASA. So that's where I met these scientists, and the whole point is that these people are trying to bring real scientific data to the forefront so that the rest of the scientific community can also get in on this and start to learn about it and realize that it's not, we're well beyond just horse say, you know what I mean? Hearsay.
Interesting. Very good. So before I move on.
Yeah, and on that, I think.
That's right.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I just want to interject something on this. And so I was on the camp, to be honest with you, of actually I was talking to Deep about this right before. I first of all, right now I'm super agnostic on all of this subject, but I was on the camp that I wasn't taking any of it really seriously, and so I feel and then I met Deep, and I realized that it's a little bit into our meeting that he actually has interest in this, and he started talking about it. We talked a little bit, and so this was a refresher for me because Deep is a very intelligent and, to me, completely normal psychologically and everything. And I was like, well, maybe there is something to this, and maybe we need to talk about this a little bit. So because
I'm sorry,
this is what I'm trying to say.
Once you first talked to Pujix about this whole UFO things, and initially you were being considered as as a crazy guy. Sorry about that. Just happened.
We'll talk so much about the opposite. The opposite.
Is this guy really normal? No, he looks normal. Yeah, that's good. All right.
Joke is actually the opposite, because so this is what I'm trying to say is because our conversation in the public sphere around this is on two extremes, and these two extremes never talk to each other. And that's one extreme that is all around the propaganda and all that, and another is about conspiracy theory. So some are delving into it deep, and a lot of them are actually really nut jobs. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have these people who are just talking about how conspiracy theory this is in essence, and there's nothing to it, etc. And now this is a fresh voice for me, to be honest. When I see somebody intelligent and normal such as Deep is going and objectively and with a agnostic view and which is the thing we want to have to talk about this. So I appreciate that, and that's what we're talking about today.
Very nice. So for now, number one, we know that Deep is a normal person who's not a psychopath or a crazy guy. Number one. Number two, I know that just by now, maybe you're still basically a bit somehow suspicious about the whole thing, right? I mean, do you right now believe in UFOs' existence as of now?
I'm 100% agnostic on this. I don't say that they don't, and I don't say they do.
Well, let me just move on to Deep here, and I'm going to ask him about Project Blue Book. Maybe that'll somehow convince you to change your mind. So, Deep, tell us right now, what is exactly Project Blue Book?
So Project Blue Book was a government investigation. It was the second to last time the government was ever public about investigating UFOs. This was in the 50s to 60s. And what they did was the project lead was an astrophysicist named Dr. Hynek. And Dr. Hynek was a guy who went to, and his job was essentially to figure out if these UFOs were actual UFOs or if they had explainable reasons behind them. In Project Blue Book, they concluded that Out of all 10,000 cases, there were 700 that remained unexplained, but that they most likely had prosaic explanations. They closed the entire project down, and they said that the Pentagon no longer has any interest in UFOs. They determined that they pose no threat to national security. And they claimed on record, on the book, for nearly 70 years straight since then, that they were not interested in UFOs up until AATIP. In the end of winter of 2017, the Pentagon, for the first time ever, came out and said, well, jokes, we actually had the secret program for the last 20 years, last decade at least, that has been investigating these things. And the things that we're talking about are like far more advanced than anything under human capability. And then you have this huge snowball effect. That's where you had like guys like me coming in, listening to this and getting interested, doing my own research, and then finally being reached out to and reaching out to some of the key sort of military and high up Pentagon DoD officials involved. And since then, like a lot more people, governments all around the world are in on this. Like Canada is as well. They know what's up. There's some. Let's just say that like it's interesting because because to a layman it might not seem like a lot that the Pentagon backtracked after 70 years to claim finally that they're doing it. And now if you Google UFO news, right, just UFO Navy on news right now, you'll see since May there's been a huge surge of mainstream media covering stories where the Navy pilots had clearance to talk about their UFO incursions. Every single one of these UFO incursions are absolutely mind-blowing. They are impossible to build from an engineering perspective. And it's why people like me are even entertained, in my opinion. It's why I'm privy to certain private information, because they need help. They can no longer just keep it to themselves. Like I see it, everyone sort of acknowledges it indirectly. But yeah, so it's not, so I just want to say, it's not about believing whether UFOs exist or not. It doesn't matter whether we do. The government does. And so we need to work from there, and we need to see, all right, what are they claiming? What these vehicles that they claim to be coming into contact with, after doing all their crazy due diligence and then clear, like the Navy can't speak to the public without any without clearance, right? They can't even tell you that what they have for breakfast without. So if they're telling us that they have no control in their airspace, that says something. And
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a recent surge in terms of their activities, and of course that seems a lot like Pentagon. Like, oh come on, this is no danger, forget about it, and like they're seriously working on something with the whole UFO thing. That's very much like Pentagon. I totally get it. But with that being said, I want to right now actually that we've talked about this issue. Pouya, do you yourself personally sense any sort of threat coming from UFOs? And I don't know. Do you just generally believe in that, like in terms of the danger that these things might pose to our life on Earth?
I mean, I guess that depends on what you believe them to be, in a sense that, okay, if there are actually out of worldly objects that are, made by other intelligent species that are obviously far intelligent, or maybe they're not necessarily far intelligent, maybe their technology just went a different branch and they got to this technology that they did. Anyway, so meaning that they have something we don't understand, so it could potentially be something that we want to pay attention to. And, I mean, we are dealing with countries like North Korea or other countries, and they have technologies on par, maybe inferior than what we have, and we're still scared of them. And we understand those technologies. So there is such a thing out there. I'm not saying there is. Then we might want to be paying attention. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Very good. Now, before we continue, let me go back here to Deep. I want to ask you right now, Deep, about metamaterials and what exactly they are and what they have to do with basically with the whole issue of UFOs. So what is metamaterial exactly from your perspective, Deep?
Sure. So metamaterial is a repeating pattern that we put or inscribe into material so that its overall effect is something different than its individual parts. So like, let's say, for example, I could build a metamaterial with a negative refractive index. That means that it would bend light in a negative direction, which means that that would be an invisibility cloak right there, right? So if you could build a metamaterial with that repeating pattern where your index is negative, yeah, you get that cloak. So similarly, the thing that we're dealing with here, however, so how it relates to craft is this, right? The entire craft could be made up of metamaterials. It should be in theory, or it could be in theory, made up of materials that have very, very, very special properties, only under certain unique conditions that you would need to know really, really high and advanced levels of technology like science and math to build it.
Wow, interesting. You're actually scaring me a little bit about how much technologies the aliens might have. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of these things through basically pop culture for the past decades, and for the most part, we just make fun of these things like this is just entertainment. But recently, I was watching a comedy show basically, and they talked about the fact that I don't know exactly. Correct me because you guys are much better at this. It was they've seen a black hole and they took an image of a black hole or something, I believe.
Yeah, you got it.
And then they realized something like that exactly was imagined by a movie or something way in the 20, 30 years ago. And this makes you wonder whether or not this whole UFO thing and these alien stories that we hear and we see in movies and stuff generally have some degrees of truth to them. So that's definitely the story. And what I want to right now talk about is how do you think these issues, the whole UFO thing, can actually affect basically our societies as well as economies and technologies one by one. But first of all, I'm going to go, basically somehow, before I go any further, I would like to somehow get your perspective, Pujix, about the societal implications of UFOs. And what do you think the presence of UFOs basically could do to our societies in the U.S. and, of course, all around the world?
I mean, we have a mini, at least societal, we have a mini experiment with that, with the 20th century and all the secrecy around all that Deep talked about, basically. So, yeah, I mean, it spreads panic to a degree, and especially if we don't have a clear-cut boundaries of what these things are, and your mind can go wild. Your world is as big as your imagination. So I wouldn't be surprised that it has some aspects like that. But at the same time, I think not to be too pessimistic to say we need an outside force, a threatening force to unite us, but it might actually bring humanity together in hindsight. Wow. But these are our speculations, by the way. I'm just going with the pop culture narrative of these.
But
things.
You're saying like the presence of an alien race attacking the Earth will ultimately allow all the nations to somehow get united. And Donald Trump's like, all right, guys, no more trade war. We got a more serious problem. So I'm going to cancel all the trade wars. And now let's go kick these guys' alien asses. All right.
Well, if movies are any reference, that's hopefully going to happen. or we're going to kill each other over resources. I don't know.
That's going to be pretty cool. So,
well, look,
I just think about the social impacts.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very important question to ask, right? I mean, answer, right? Or know about, because look, the technology that we're going to get from this, in my opinion, will be far beyond our imagination and our wildest dreams once we fully understand how to reverse engineer it. And the more people who work on it, the more people who know about it, the faster we'll get there. But then there's the whole societal implications, because let's assume that we do get full confirmation. The government finally just says it out loud that we're not alone. What happens then? Some people might rescind their religion. Some people might lose trust in their government a little bit. Not that they're going to do anything about it, in my opinion. And other people, I think, will maybe just even lose interest in their day-to-day lives. I mean, like, what happens when you find out that there's a civilization that's beyond money that's actually managed to get here somehow? And I can guarantee you they do not care about waking up at 9 a.m. to get to work, or 7 a.m.
Good.
So what happens then, right? You have, I think the societal implications will be huge. It will just be like a slow burn. It will be nothing for the first 2 years or so. Suddenly, 10 years, we're in a totally different golden age. Like, I honestly think we're headed towards a golden age because of this.
Oh my goodness. Amazing.
That is to say, this is not our golden age. Excellent. Love it.
Well, everybody has a golden age, but when it comes to UFOs, that's a whole different story. Because I mean, the very presence of aliens can change, and quite frankly, I would have very much rather an alien would be our president for the United States. It would be a lot better and more fun, and probably better at speaking as well. But generally, there's going to be a lot of changes in that regard. So, speaking of that, I'm pretty sure that the impact of UFOs or the presence of alien races won't just affect our societies, because it'll also affect the way we approach technology and how we develop them. So let me first move on to Pouya here. Pouya, what do you think are some of the technological implications of the UFOs and their presence?
Yeah, I mean that again, assuming that these are outer-worldly technologies. I mean, there are some technologies, whether outer-worldly or not. So we understanding them and trying to reverse engineer them and use them would, depending on how sophisticated these things are, which I'm sure Deep will let us let on us, and then
I'm dying to talk about that.
Exactly. So I'm not going to take too much time, so you can take a whole of the time. But the truth of it is that obviously we want advancements of our technology to do better things, to do more things. That's the whole 20th and 21st century has been so far. So if they can hedge us further with some sort of reverse engineering of these technologies and an understanding of probably even better understanding of the fundamental physics or other sciences, then it can actually leap us forward by a lot, I suppose. Which I'm going to hand it off to Deep. Now you can give us details.
Of course. So Deep, why don't you go ahead and give us some further details about how technology might be affected by UFOs and the presence of aliens and their basic technologies on Earth?
Sure. And like Pouya said, we're assuming that they're here. Obviously, as badly as I want to say they're definitely here, I'm going to be cautious, right? And I just want to say that it's statistically unlikely that these are ours. The flying machines that the Navy are shitting their pants over, so to speak.
That's right.
Yeah, not ours. And that's because I know some of the background science as well involved, and that's what I'll get into. So how it affects technology directly, the first things that are going to be affected are propulsion. So what we're looking at right now are materials that seem to demonstrate space-time manipulation and what they call space-time metric engineering. So what that means, for example, there's one metamaterial, and this is, I've talked to two individual scientists who have worked on this specific metamaterial. This came from a supposed crashed UFO. So, and again, this technology, the things that we're observing, far beyond our capabilities. So this thing, when you fire an electron at it and it's activated, when you activate it and then you fire an electron towards it, as soon as the electron enters its vicinity, it gets towards the destination faster than without it. So what that means is that it's somehow been able to contract space somehow and make it shorter, even though the only thing that should be able to do that are massive black holes or whatnot. So this thing is able to move and manipulate gravity in ways that we only expected very, very large bodies to my understanding. And now if we were to speculate what this would be really good for, like I said, it's propulsion. So if you can finally negate, for example, most of gravity's effect or nullify yourself in space-time, you can go anywhere on the planet in less than a minute with the right technology. So that's what we're looking at.
What I thought, right? You were talking about this one, and of course, what I'm about to say is just a work of fiction. But one of the favorite franchises that we like, basically Pouya and I, is called The Mass Effect. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that franchise, basically. And in that series, they talked a lot about the concept of fast travel, like very rapid travel, which might allow, for example, humanity to travel to distant galaxies very, very rapidly. So are you saying that if at some point, let's say we could somehow, there are UFOs and we get their technologies and we somehow reverse engineer them somehow, you think that we will then have the ability to travel very rapidly across various galaxies?
Without a doubt. And that's what we're going for. That is exactly what the people who are up there, you know what I mean, are aiming for and gunning for. Because we have this tech. It's not just one party. There's at least 4 or 5 individual groups out there in the world, 3 of which are public, with these materials, and these are different materials with different extraordinary properties that we can't recreate. They come from different vehicles. It's almost weird how like in reach they are. If you really wanted to hold one of these materials, you could probably in less than 6 months or 1 year maybe get your hands on one.
Wow, interesting, pretty cool. And you mentioned about like the technological aspect and fast traveling. Here's the question that just somehow dawns on me right now. I just can't fully grasp it. What is exactly driving the damn thing? Like, who is behind the wheel? Are these like somehow like the drones we use in the U.S. or all around the world, or are they perhaps maybe they have some pilot on and then they just somehow eject out of the thing before it crashes on Earth? Like, who do you think is behind the wheel of these UFOs? Pooja, any ideas?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on if you interpret them to be aliens, whether Deep probably has factual evidence on this, that whether there were actually any.
On. Even if
never
I
mind.
did have an
Okay. Okay, so classified. Anyways, so so depends whether if we presume these UFOs to be alien, then I suppose I wouldn't presume if I was going to another planet and as a species, as humanity, if I was deciding that, I wouldn't want to put one of our people in it to go spy if we had the remote technology. And given the technologies that they have, I don't think remote would be a massive problem for them. So could be unmanned. Don't know. Deep.
Interesting. So let's go to Deep now here. Deep, what is your perspective? What is driving these UFOs exactly?
Sure. And I'd just like to say, preface, everything I'm about to say is 100% speculation in my own opinion and doesn't represent anybody that I am affiliated with. So with all that in mind, I believe that even if we were to recover, say, biological entities in these craft, let's say that they somehow, I don't know, telepathically control these things. There's no wires, there's nothing. Everything is very brilliantly created. I would say that even if they were biological, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the original race. Like, I would agree with Pouya. There would be no reason for any of these races or civilizations who might have built these things to step down themselves. Our environment, there's no way it would be, naturally fit for them. So what I see them doing instead is building second or third generation life forms, which are able to move around, do their own thing. They're totally sentient themselves, but they are fully controlled and telepathically controlled. That would be my opinion.
Oh my goodness. And you kind of talked about like creating different life forms, because it is not exactly relevant to what we just said, but Elon Musk was once discussing this issue, and he said that he believes AI can develop to a point where it actually becomes like an alien race. And now you're talking about other alien races creating different life forms that will then allow them to use them in different things. And
Very
UFOs
true. Yep.
might be one of them, basically. That's quite interesting and incredible. Obviously, when it comes to UFOs, the questions obviously are always there. And there has not been a lot of scientific work yet, except for that 270-page paper. Oh my gosh, who's going to read that? But ultimately, the fact of the matter is there hasn't been a lot done. But as you mentioned earlier, this interest is now somehow being highlighted nowadays in the media, and I'm pretty sure that has a lot to do with the fact that the U.S. is aiming to somehow move towards a space force. So this, obviously, if you are going to be in a space, you definitely need to.
And I'd love to talk about Space Force a bit.
That's right.
Sure. So, and you're absolutely right about that. It does have to. Well, I would say Space Force has to do more with current events rather than the other way around. So, what that means, for example, is that if you go into these stories, like what the Navy is telling us today, as of today, is that there has been an increase over the last 4 years, a massive increase in how often the Navy and different pilots are encountering these things all over the world, wherever they're flying, whether it's out in the Middle East or they're doing their training exercises out on the coast. And we're talking like some of their units have encountered these things almost daily for some of these. Yeah. So, and we're talking things that, by the way, defy the laws of physics. Like, they move in ways that reality doesn't allow for. And to me, that's very disturbing, because I have yet to meet a single physicist or engineer who's been able to explain it. And I know we can't. That's kind of the problem. But we do have some clues now that we have some of these materials in our hands, and we've been analyzing them for decades, frankly. And the public will be like, there's some of it out in the public knowledge anyways, but more will be released, in my opinion, over the next couple of months. Regarding metamaterial analysis and what they can do, what these things are.
That is incredible. That is incredible, because in the Beyond the Present podcast, we're concerned with the this whole notion of futurism, and what you're saying right now probably could be the future of not only the Space Force, but what we're going to do basically with astrophysics, and because that's a very important subject. If we can somehow at some point have access to UFOs and be able to somehow reverse engineer them, this is going to allow us to somehow traverse beyond what our current space vessels and spaceships can do, and that's going to like transform the entire thing. And I totally agree with you, and I generally hope that at some point we'll hear more from this. It's just the beginning, of course. We are all futurists. We would like to imagine what's going to happen in the coming 5 to 10 years. But Deep, you made your prediction. You put a number here. You said 5 to 10 years. First of all, ufology will become an official science, and then hopefully we're going to see what technology will do to somehow take it to the whole new level. So that's pretty much all the time we have for now. So why don't we go ahead for a wrap up and summary of the discussion that we had today. I want to first move on to Pujix. So Pujix, you yourself are an astrophysicist, which means you definitely know a lot more about this than I do. And I wanted to ask you about your general conclusion, to somehow give our listeners a summary of what was discussed, and more importantly, what is your take on the subject?
Right. I mean, so I'm going to say something quickly because I want to ask Deep a question too, and I know we're sort of out of time. But so I think we need to have an open mind around something that there is enough puts enough curiosity around something that deserves it. And I don't know if personally, I don't know if UFOs did earn that, but I think we're too quick to dismiss them at the same time. So as a person who is serious about science and technology, and as you mentioned, future of our race and all that, I think we need to be able to have conversations around them rationally and using scientific method, and not bark at each other a little bit around the subject. And also, I want to ask Deep to very quickly, because we talked about this right before recording, me and Deep, to give us an idea of what the psyop is, and then your final comments.
That's right. So first, Deep, why don't you go ahead and talk about psyop before we go for the final comment?
Sure, yeah. So psyop is like a psychological operation. It's a tool used in psychological warfare, way to, trick the public into believing something specific when it never really happened. Like, let's say a false flag, a false school shooting, a false alien attack would be a psyop.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that UFOs could be somehow a psyop?
I'm saying we can't rule it out, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going on here. Unfortunately, because
that's right.
Yeah, I have my reasons, but obviously the truth, time will tell. I think we'll find out for ourselves.
I'm guessing we want to wait for about 5 to 10 years to see what happens to ufology, and then more importantly,
I don't even think we need to wait that long. But yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Very well. And Deep, of course, what else do you want to add? What is your conclusion after all of our discussion regarding UFOs? Of course, we really enjoyed your contribution here, but in general, how do you sum up our discussion so far, and what is your final take on the subject?
Sure. So I think, first of all, I love the agnostic, sober, rational perspective that we took here and way of going about it, where we didn't totally rule out everything. And we didn't accept everything either, and we just kind of stuck to what is true. That's that is something that I really like, because what I've seen in the past, or with other scientists, for example, is that they don't even want to bother addressing the facts, which is very ironic. And so yeah, I really appreciated that. I do think that the public should start preparing, maybe just in case, if this does end up being the real deal. Prepare mentally, prepare in terms of career, figure that stuff out, learn more, research, read into the current events, even see what the Navy is talking about, maybe find out why they're telling us these things and what they might be hinting at. And other than that, I'm extremely excited to see how this affects technology, because it is a huge undertaking. The aerospace companies, or the companies that are looking at these things, these materials, they know how hard it's going to be. but they're not shying away. They are dealing with it in their own way. They will eventually. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes in the near future.
Fantastic. It was a very, very great show we had, and I'm so glad to have Deep here. And I'm definitely sure that at some point we're going to have Deep back here for other similar discussions. You have a lot of great ideas. And of course, we're going to have, I'm pretty sure, one episode about entrepreneurship with you, Deep, discussing startups. But for now, I want to thank you. And of course, the director of the show, Pujix, for your great, basically, comments and ideas. I learned a lot from you guys. Personally, I was not familiar at all with the whole notion, but being here and learning from you guys was a truly wonderful experience. So, Pujix, I want to thank you so much for, first of all, allowing me to somehow meet Deep, basically, and it was a great, great experience. So, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, both of you, for having me. And of course, I want to thank
you, Deep, so much for your great ideas, and definitely quite refreshing. Sometimes a little bit scary, but definitely worth listening to. And I want to thank you for that as well.
Oh, right. Actually, you just reminded me. One last comment. Sorry. thank you.
Right.
Okay, just because I think it's that important. If they were going to attack us, if there was something to be worried about, in my opinion, we would be dead. They clearly don't plan on it. So just, think about that.
So for now, guys, just take it easy and know that even if they do attack, you can't do anything. So just let it go take it easy. That's
exactly.
Right. Just get drunk and wait for it, man. Who cares? All right. That's right. Go for it. Right. Just get drunk and forget about the whole thing. All right, guys. Thank you very much, both of you.
Bye, everyone.
It was great to be here. And that is all the time we have for it. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. If you have any comments or ideas on how we can actually improve the show, or if you'd like us to somehow meet certain individuals and pick their brains, please do let us know on our website, and we'll be glad to hear from you. That's all the time we have for. My name is Daniel Mulligan, and this was Beyond the Present Podcast.